Hey everyone, Demon Mike here bringing you a hero spotlight in Heroes of the Storm. For this spotlight we're going over Illidan, and I'm just going to be going over talents, and I'm going to be going over the talents and the abilities, but I'm going over the talents that I choose. I'm not going to be going over the other talents very much, if at all. So if you are wanting to go over each of the other talents, just use your own time and discretion and judgment and decide if you want to play differently than I do. Uh, and there are some variations that I choose from game to game, and I'll explain that as well. So the first talent I go for is I always go for Shadow Shield. I ignore these other talents. I just think this Shadow Shield is too strong to pass up. It increases Illidan's survivability a ton. I guess if I had a lot of support on my team, like Tazdar's shielding and like Lily healing, if I had that combo, I would likely then try the Seasoned Marksman just to try to build a lot of attack damage for my basic attacks. But anyways, that would be like the only exception from going outside of Shadow Shield. And Illidan agrees. Moving on to level 4 here, I always choose Marked for Death. When you get this ability, it causes your Q to cause a crit to that target that you used the Q on. And I'll go into much more detail about that in just a little bit. For the level 7 talent, I pretty much always go for First Aid. It's another helpful boost to your durability as Illidan. He's a rather squishy hero, so if you're not playing him correctly, you will die like instantly every time. If you're playing him correctly, then you can get away with a lot of stuff, and it's really too much fun. Like, it makes you want to play like you're Superman, and then you get carried away, you overextend, and then you die. At least that's how I play sometimes. I sometimes get carried away. But anyway, moving along here, the other talent I choose in this tier is Reflexive Block, and the only time I really choose this is if I'm up against a lot of attack damage heroes that are like really about their basic attacks, like Vala, Sergeant Hammer, and like Thrall, just to name a few, or another Illidan, for example. If I'm up against all those heroes, then I'm definitely going to get this talent. It's really useful, reducing their basic attacks after you've made them miss for the 5 seconds. So these two charges last 5 seconds after your 5 seconds of evading. Or excuse me, 2 seconds, my bad. I was reading the shield and that confused me. So you're evading for 2 seconds, and then this will add 2 more blocks. It will reduce the damage from their basic attacks by 50%. It has 2 charges, so and it lasts 5 seconds. I'm pretty sure I explained that clear enough, and I'm gonna go ahead and move on to level 10. Metamorphosis is my go-to heroic ability. I also call them ultimates or ults. So if I start calling it that, that's what I'm referring to as these heroic abilities. The hunt ability can be extremely good for certain times. Like if your team isn't very crowd control heavy, like if you don't have a lot of stuns or snares, then the hunt might be a better choice for you. especially if your team has a lot of durability already, then there's kind of no point of going Metamorphosis. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's such a good heroic ability that even then, like, there was only uh, certain times that the hunt would really be better. Like, if you absolutely needed a stun, then you might as well go for it. But that stun is only 1 second, and that could be a good counter against like a hero like Lily, or Vala when they're channeling their heroic abilities. You can interrupt them with a stun or knockback or something. So that would be Illidan's only case for an interrupt. That's the only choice you get. The other use you could use this for is if they have a specialist or somebody that's pushing in a lane constantly and they're overextending constantly, then this heroic ability is going to allow you to jump onto them with very, very much ease. You're just going to be able to counter them extremely well, and they will likely not be able to get away no matter what. Just kind of depends on the situation and if they have backup. The Metamorphosis is my go-to ability here because it really adds a synergy to the build I'm doing. It increases my attack speed by 20%, and I also gain 250 temporary maximum health for each hero hit. And on top of that, I'm also dealing 300 damage in an area. So if I had all 5 of the heroes in an area, I'm dealing 300 damage to all of them, rather than if I had the hunt, I'm only dealing 350 damage to one hero. So that could be potentially 1500 damage in one hit compared to 350. But that's only if you hit all 5. So you got to take that into account. But like I was mentioning, and what I really want to emphasize here is that I mainly picked this for the for 2 reasons. It adds both an engage and disengage. I can use it either way to dive in or to get away from the enemy. Or and on top of that, it increases my attack speed. And let's go ahead and talk about Illidan's trait, Betrayer's Thirst. And all of Illidan's basic attacks are going to heal him for 20% of the damage dealt and reduce his abilities by 1 second. So that is a huge trait. It's going to allow you to heal up and reduce your abilities immensely. So even this 120-second cooldown ultimate, it's going to be a rather short cooldown. Let's start talking about the abilities. So your Q is a dive, W is sweeping strikes, E is evasion, and then R is metamorphosis. And with the build we have going on, so far at least, we have 1 extra ability, first aid. So with the default keybinds, that's just going to be 1. And that's going to heal for 35% of my maximum health over 6 seconds. It adds a lot of healing if I use this with a combination of metamorphosis. So if I jump onto a lot of enemy heroes and then gain a a bunch more maximum health and then I hit first aid, I'm going to be healing for a big amount, and I'm actually going to be a tanky Illidan. But anyway, let's move along here and finish off our talent build before we get even further into the abilities. I'll explain how they're working. For the level 13 talent, I see there's only three real choices here: Giant Killer, Friend or Foe, and Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense is a perfect ability to help you become more durable if you're up against a team that has a lot of ability power, like ability damage, where they're just throwing a bunch of AoE and skill shots at you, and they're just going straight through your evasion. Then you want this talent. This will help you survive, and I mean, you have to still be on track with when those abilities are coming in, because evasion is only going to last 2 seconds, so you're going to reduce the incoming damage of those abilities by 50% for 2 seconds. So you really got to time that correctly. Just like auto attacks, you just got to time it, and you'll block a lot of the damage and survive a lot longer. Friend or Foe can be extremely good if you are on some kind of voice service with your team, and you can communicate with them really well. You can a lot of times you could actually use this as a save for yourself. If you overextend, you can dive onto your allies rather than trying to rely on the enemy creeps or buildings to be in range for you to get away from the enemy heroes. But my number one choice for this tier is Giant Killer. It just really adds synergy to this build, adds more damage, and really allows me to kill off the enemy heroes much more quickly. It deals an added bonus of 1.5% of the maximum health of the enemy heroes that I'm targeting. So that's a lot more damage onto my auto attacks, which will then turn into more healing onto myself while I'm reducing my ability cooldowns. So that's why I pretty much always am choosing Giant Killer. But again, Sixth Sense could be really good against specific heroes that have a lot of abilities that are going to be constantly targeting you. Jaina, for instance, if you're up against Jaina, the Sixth Sense ability could save your life against her. She has a lot of burst that can really nuke you down if you don't have that talent. Let's move on to 16. The level 16 talent, we got, I think it's only between these three: Second Sweep, Blood for Blood, and Stone Skin. And that's only because my abilities are great and all, they deal a good amount of damage, but I'm really relying on, for this build at least, I'm really relying on my auto attacks and increasing my health off of metamorphosis. So I'm not really trying to heal myself from abilities, I'm just trying to survive. And so my number one go-to ability is Second Sweep, and that's just for more movement. I can get in and out of situations a lot easier with this talent, and it also adds even more getaway ability. So if your heroic ability Metamorphosis is on cooldown, then you have 2 sweeping strikes to help yourself get out of trouble. So that's what sweeping strikes does. It dashes you forward into the target point and all enemies within that arrow, this arrow here, as long as they're within that point, they will be hit with the damage listed. So at level 19, it's going to deal 250 damage to all enemies that are along the way. And on top of that, the most important thing that I really want to emphasize here is that it increases your basic attack damage by 35%. It's a buff that lasts 4 seconds, so you're wanting to cast sweeping strikes on top of other abilities. Just keep that sweeping strikes buff up, the basic attack buff up, and you'll want to use dive for a combination of that. And let me get into that now. So we'll start talking about dive and marked for death. So there's really only 2 ways to go about this. Either you dive onto the target, use sweeping strikes, and then you attack the target, or sweeping strikes onto any enemies and then you dive onto your target you're wanting to kill and then hit them for the crit. Both ways you'll have the sweeping strike buff, and you'll then hit them for the 35% extra auto damage, the basic attack damage, and then you'll also do the 100% more damage on that basic attack. So I don't want to overemphasize this, but I don't think I can emphasize this enough, that you want to keep the sweeping strike buff up, and especially when you're diving and doing that extra crit damage. Evasion, I've already gone over this quite a bit. You use the ability and you start evading basic attacks for 2 seconds, which is a pretty big window in this fast of a pace game. It's a rather steady pace. It's not too quick, but we have the Shadow Shield ability that will start absorbing the ability damage, like Arthas's AoE that he's doing around him. That's really helpful for that. It just helps you become much more durable as Illidan. For Metamorphosis, you want to cast it onto as many heroes as possible. So you want to aim this radius and include as many heroes in that radius as possible when you land there. And you'll see what I mean by land here in a second. I'll cast it onto him. So I just hit everything in the area for 390 damage. And then the combination of sweeping strikes and then diving made me hit him extremely hard, and I was able to nuke him down before he could get away. Not to say he's a smart bot, he's rather an unintelligent bot in this try mode. But with that aside, it is a ton of damage and is quite devastating to the enemy. Let's go ahead and do the last talent actually, level 20. So these are all really good talents. With this build, there's only these 3 to choose from. Literally, you can't choose this one. So the go-to talent for me is Demonic Form. I don't want to completely discredit Nexus Blades, or Bolt of the Storm, because those are really good talents, but I think the synergy of this build that I have going on really just maximizes with this talent, because it also adds a 50% reduction to duration of the disabling effects that you get, like stuns and snares. Since you're an assassin, that's a really important talent to have. It will allow you to survive a lot of things that you wouldn't normally be able to. And on top of that, it's increasing your attack speed even further, from 20% to 30%, so 10% more. And it's making your demonic form permanent, unless you die. I don't know why it doesn't add that in the tooltip here, but if you die, then you leave demonic form. So let's show you how that works. So now I'm in demon form, and I can, when I mount up now, I'm actually just flying. I'm flapping my wings, which is completely epic and awesome. But I'm just as any other hero. Once I'm not quote-unquote mounted, I can't fly anymore, so it's fair still. It just looks awesome. So again, just make sure you're keeping the sweeping strike buff up, diving onto the target you're wanting to kill for that big crit, and then using evasion right at the right moment to both absorb the ability damage you're taking and also to evade basic attacks. So here's a pretty good tip for you. When you're farming the Bruiser Merc camps, you can cause one of these bigger melee guys to dance around and chase after you, so you're only tanking up to 3 at a time. I always kill the caster first to get him out of the way. He has the lowest health of the 4, and then I just make the other one dance around while I kill the other 2. Once they're both really low, I kill them at the same time and then finish off the last one. So I slowed this footage down here so you can see that you can use the dive ability to avoid being stunned from especially like this boss merc camp if you cast it at the right time. Technically I messed up by sweeping strikes out. I'll admit that I was trying to avoid the stun, but I also understand that if I dive in at the right time, that I'll just take the damage. As you can see here, I'm diving in, I'll take the damage, but I will not be stunned. Every time you dive, it puts the word on the screen unstoppable, indicating that there's no ability that will stop you from diving while you're diving, and it's just relaying that information to you and other players that are around you, so that they don't think you're like cheating or something. But there's that for you. So to emphasize using your abilities even more, you can use your sweeping strikes to gather coins really well, as you just saw. And right here I start keeping Sonya out of her melee range of me as much as possible, and I just keep going on the other side of Muradin, using that unit collision to help reduce the damage on myself. And then once Muradin's low, I just go ahead and chase him down, pop evasion, and burn Sonya down. That might have looked like we had the advantage since we had a level on them, but if you didn't notice, Anubarak was really low mana, so I think we both did an excellent job there, just really lowering the damage output onto myself, and that's the only reason why we defeated him there. So with all merc camps, you're wanting to sweeping strike all targets, so the siege camps are no exception. You just sweeping strike on both of them, focus one down with your dive and auto attacks. Make sure you're popping evasion on cooldown whenever they start attacking, so don't waste it until they start attacking, and then pop it on cooldown every time it comes up. And if you're on Blackheart's Bay, don't forget the coins. Be sure to use your abilities to cut off the path of the enemy. So use the unit collision to your utmost advantage, and just keep cutting off their path, and it will allow you to get many more kills than you would be just trying to chase them down, hitting their backside. So a couple more things before we wrap up this video. If you're able to bait out the enemy team, making them chase you, you can really chase him down as Illidan. He's probably one of the best, if not the best, at chasing down enemy heroes, especially if they have low health. They're not going to get away without, I mean, there are some exceptions, but even if you're sitting behind a fort, you're not safe. As you can see, you can dive around the forts and the core even. You can also attack the core, the fort, and even the wall structures, and you're reducing your abilities by doing that, and also you're gaining life as well. So make them chase you, then close the gap and nuke them down. I hope this video has helped you. I hope that you liked it. Thanks for watching and have a good one.